Greetings, sci-fi fans. It's me, Nick Cicada, here for another Star Wars video. I think one of the reasons that my sci-fi analyses don't get as popular as other sci-fi analyses here on the internet is because a lot of channels only focus on Star Wars or Star Trek exclusively, but I like both and I talk about both in a lot of videos. And also I really like Dune, and I argue that Dune is maybe better than both. Or not better than both, but damn interesting and underrated, so I try and make a sizable amount of Dune analysis also, because Dune is really hype. But today I figure I'll revisit Star Wars, because I haven't done a Star Wars video in a while, and I think Star Wars is an interesting franchise as much as the other two. I'd say I consider Dune, Star Wars, and Star Trek kind of the three pillars of grand science fiction. So yeah, today I'm going to talk about Star Wars, and with me here is my co-host, Jar Jar. Anyway, I figure I would just talk about where I currently sit on Star Wars, because much more than Star Trek or Dune, I have such constantly fluctuating opinions about Star Wars. Like, Star Wars is crazy to me. Just the fact that it's gone the way it has is absolutely fucking insane. I remember specifically in 2019 walking out of the theater after The Rise of Skywalker. I'd seen The Force Awakens, I'd seen The Last Jedi, I'd seen Rise of Skywalker back to back to back, all when they came out. And I remember being like, oh, well, I didn't understand most of what went on in this movie, and it all seemed kind of convoluted and backwards, but hey, it's Star Wars, it was fun, I had fun, and I was kind of naive back then, because I figured that, I like Star Trek better, and I can just say, oh, well, Star Trek's the better one, but, Star Wars, for what it's worth, is decent, and they're all just kind of goofy fun, and I would put, like, all the Star Wars movies in, like, the same category of quality. You can watch all of them, it's Star Wars, whatever. But the more I look back at it, the more I study it and think about it, the more I realize, like, the sequels are ass, and there's no denying that, like, they're way worse than the originals or the prequels. I would like to argue in this video is that the prequels and the originals are equally good, and they should be watched as one singular entity. That the only thing you need to watch, actually, as a Star Wars fan, is just the 6 main Star Wars movies, and you shouldn't even consider anything else canon. You shouldn't, like, give any credence to anything else. Like, you can read and watch the expanded universe of Star Wars if you really fucking want to, for whatever reason, but it won't enhance or add to your experience of Star Wars any, because, like, the 6 main Star Wars movies, the originals and the prequels, are such great feats of filmmaking. They're so fucking well made. Like, nothing can even hope to come close. Here's an interesting question. Why is it that people have always felt the need to have sequels to Star Wars? I think what this goes to is that most people assume that the original trilogy was meant to have a sequel trilogy after it that would continue the stories of Han and Leia and Luke and like that, whereas actually, I think Return of the Jedi works as a fine send-off to the universe and all its characters, and works as a great end to the series, and it doesn't need to go past that. In fact, the story doesn't really have anywhere to go past that. The conflict is resolved, the characters are all in a great spot, the prophecy is fulfilled, it's time to pack up and go home. What would even happen after Return of the Jedi? People are used to a traditional narrative structure, and for that reason, prequels are seen as less conventional than sequels, even if prequels can add just as much information and depth to a universe as sequels can. Ever since 1983 with Return of the Jedi, everyone wanted to know what happened next with the characters they like. And then they see the prequels, and they just see Obi-Wan Kenobi and Palpatine, and they're like, oh, wait, these aren't the characters we like. Where's the characters we like? We're so attached to these characters. What they don't realize is that Star Wars does not depend functionally on characters. What separates Star Wars from other sci-fi series, I would argue, is that it's not character-focused, it's archetype-focused. The characters aren't even really characters, they're just representations of mythic archetypes that have existed for a long, long time in storytelling. You can tell this from how George Lucas creates his movies. The characters are mythic heroes and villains. And Star Wars is great because more than any other series, it is a perfect space opera. It is a fantastic, richly layered drama. But at the same time, most of everything is symbolic or allegorical. I mean, the timeline is literally split up and centered around the Battle of Yavin in the Star Wars universe, such that events before the Battle of Yavin are referred to as BBY, and after the Battle of Yavin is referred to as ABY. And that's fine. That is a good event to like split the timeline up into. It's a very significant event in the Star Wars universe. But ultimately it goes to show that Star Wars is not about characters, it's about actions. It's about what fits into the timeline with cohesion and with intent. The great thing about the prequels, and I've made this argument before, is that they work as prequels because they explain exactly how the original trilogy came to be, where the characters came from, what was going on with them. Not necessarily the characters, but just like the setting too, how the galaxy got to the state that it is in the originals. They're damn fine prequels in that they completely serve and fulfill their narrative potential. And say what you will about how they look, oh, too much CGI. I've seen way worse CGI. I've seen Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow, and that movie doesn't have a good story like the fucking Star Wars prequels. It's just fucking dumb. The Star Wars prequels are so well written, and the acting is great. Ian McDiarmid's great, Ewan McGregor's fine, Liam Neeson's fine. What the fuck did we ever hate the Star Wars prequels for? They're great, and they speak to George Lucas's capabilities as a filmmaker. When I go back and I watch the Star Wars prequels, and the interesting thing about them too is that you can watch the prequels and then the originals, or you can watch the originals and then the prequels and get a completely different experience depending on which order you watch them in. The interesting thing about the prequels is that they have a kind of circular logic to them, and George Lucas speaks a lot about like the rule of threes and how you want to, put certain characters at certain points to mirror each other. And it's just masterful. It's just masterful to watch like how well assembled these movies are. They are some seriously good shit. And I don't just argue that, like, Revenge of the Sith is the only good one. No, Attack of the Clone, Phantom Menace are fucking fine. They're finely made movies. There are seriously, like, zero flaws I can think of with either of them. They're damn good. A couple years ago, I made a video about a terrible novel called Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which is, like, the first ever expanded universe Star Wars novel, and was based off a script that was going to be the sequel to Star Wars if Star Wars wasn't financially successful, which luckily it was. A Splinter of the Mind's Eye was this really bland, like, it wasn't exciting, it got all the characters wrong, because they weren't very well defined at that point. But I foolishly assumed that all Star Wars expanded universe material would be as bad as Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which, from what I've seen of it, it really isn't. Like, there are novels like the Thrawn trilogy, and there's the stuff with the Yuuzhan Vong later on, after the Battle of Endor, that sounds pretty damn interesting from everything that I've seen of it. Like, it sounds pretty cool. And I just think all the time about how much cooler it would be if Disney just fucking made movies out of that instead of coming up with its own characters, or not coming up with its own, hiring J.J. Abrams to come up with his own fucking characters. J.J. Abrams, I really can't stand the guy. He doesn't make that many good movies. The few good movies that he's made, like Super 8 and Cloverfield Lane, everyone seems to hate for some fucking reason, even though those are like the only two good movies he's made. But he doesn't know how to make fucking Star Wars. I've realized that. Because he has this overly sentimental view of Star Wars. And I remember specifically when he got the rights to the trilogy around the time of The Force Awakens, he was like, "We won't be having any more of these midichlorians. The Force is going to be spiritual again and deep." And it's like, to me, midichlorians are like the coolest fucking thing. The prequels do such a damn good job of expanding this universe, introducing fascinating new planets like Naboo, seen with the Geonosis, and all this shit. It makes the universe seem so much bigger and expansive, and oh my gosh, it's cinematic perfection. Camino? Are you kidding me? Now here comes J.J. Abrams. Oh, what do you got? Fucking Jakku? What, it's just another big fucking desert? We already got a big fucking desert with Tatooine. And that already is derivative of Arrakis from Dune, so it's like, you just can't come up with any new shit? Like, what the fuck? You hack. What I mean to say is that the stuff with the Yuzhan Vong and the like actually sounds pretty damn interesting, and I'd like to see that turned into a movie. And it must be so disheartening as a novelist or, a comic artist to spend all this time writing these insane storylines, which aren't as good as something that George Lucas would come up with, obviously, but, are pretty decent, pretty okay, and kind of make sense as to how these characters would go, how Luke and Leia and Han Solo would end up after the original trilogy, training the next generation of Jedi, so on and so forth. Pretty interesting shit if you think about it. But then, oh, what's this? Disney buys the property, and suddenly everything that you just kind of assumed was canon is now legends. What the fuck does that even mean? It's a legend? Like what? Is these like campfire stories that are told around in the Star Wars universe? What the fuck? Just make it canon. It's a better story than your shitty fucking fanfic with like Luke and Han Solo getting stabbed, and it doesn't even make any fucking sense. They never even meet up in the sequel trilogy. There's not a single scene where Han and Leia and Luke are like in the same room, even though that would make sense for them to like reunite. Maybe Lando's there, but like for them to like be in the same room, wouldn't that be like good fan service? Wouldn't fans like to see that? No, let's just have them strung out across like 50 crap planets that nobody fucking cares about, that aren't even impressive set pieces, that don't contribute anything of actual value to the story. Like, the sequels are ass. And don't get me wrong, it's not because, like, Rey's, what you call it, fucking Mary Sue or whatever. I didn't even notice that. Like, she doesn't seem overpowered. I mean, there's plenty of overpowered characters in Star Wars. And I think part of the issue is the backlash against the sequels is so fucking sexist. Like, no one calls fucking Padme a Mary Sue or Leia a Mary Sue, but Rey's a Mary Sue. That's not the problem at all. It's just that these movies are written and directed by people who don't know how the fuck to tell a coherent story. So maybe it seems like Rey's overpowered or whatever, but she's probably not. It's just that they never bothered to fucking define her power. They didn't even know who the fuck she was until the third movie. And that much is like readily obvious. It's just J.J. Abrams' fucking mystery box. He's just this giant clown just going, ooh, my mystery box. And I don't care what's in the mystery box by the time it's opened, because it's like, it's gone on too long. How about let's just have a coherent story instead of your fucking mystery box? Really though, when you get right down to it, Star Wars doesn't work beyond the original 6 movies, because where it starts and where it ends make complete sense. And trying to go past Return of the Jedi or before The Phantom Menace, it doesn't really work, because it's explained pretty definitively that Emperor Palpatine is the greatest threat the galaxy has ever faced. That Anakin and Luke Skywalker are two extremely important figures in galactic history, and like, I don't care about all these fucking minor characters who don't do diddly shit. Star Wars works when it's big and epic, and the more the Star Wars franchise devolves into self-referential tendencies and absurd minutiae, the less I care about it. Even the stuff that is what I would consider canon, like the stuff that happens before the Phantom Menace, like the Rakata, the Infinite Empire, and the Pious Day or whatever, I don't really care about all this. It's not Emperor Palpatine or any of the characters I know or care about or are interested in, and it's just kind of fluff. It's just kind of to say, oh, you know, there's a long and storied history to this world, to this galaxy, but ultimately it's not as interesting as the stuff we made movies about, because we bothered to make movies about this, and we didn't bother to make movies about this, so obviously this is more important than this. And the same goes for stuff made after Return of the Jedi chronologically. What are you going to do with the galaxy now that Emperor Palpatine is gone? You either have to bring him back, which doesn't make any fucking sense, or you introduce new villains like Admiral Thrawn, who's just a blue guy. He looks like he's from a Kool-Aid commercial or something. I can't take this guy seriously as a worthy opponent who's as evil, as dangerous, as menacing as Palpatine. Give me a frickin' break. I've given up completely on watching anything Star Wars that isn't just the 6 movies. I don't care about The Bad Batch. I don't give a fuck about The Mandalorians. I don't care about Book of Boba Fett. All these shows look like shit. They're just set in dark rooms with like 2 characters talking to each other. That's not what Star Wars should be. Star Wars should be fucking explosions and lightsaber duels. And now we just have like Mandalorian, who I don't even know who he is. I guess he's supposed to be like Boba Fett, but like the lame version. And he's just sitting in a room and he's talking to some old guy with a beard, and he's like, yo, and then the old guy is like, yo, what up? And that's like the whole show. That's like what Star Wars is now. It's fucking pathetic. Even Andor, you know, everyone says Andor is great. Oh boy, watch Andor. It saves Star Wars. I don't want to watch Andor. What, it's anti-fascist? Good. Star Wars has always been anti-fascist. If you didn't notice, Emperor Palpatine is basically Hitler. He is a fascist by definition, so I'm pretty sure the politics of Star Wars have always been clear to that extent. I don't think I need to watch Andor to get that message. The same goes for how The Mandalorian has Baby Yoda. Oh boy, don't you want to watch Baby Yoda? Why would I want to watch Baby Yoda when I've already seen adult Yoda in like 5 good movies? Not in A New Hope, but you know, he's in 5 of the movies, so why the fuck do I want to watch him in infant form? What's the point of this? Star Wars just keeps bringing back all these characters, and it doesn't bring in anything new. At the very least, with the original expanded universe, like the Yuuzhan Vong and shit, at least that was a new idea. At least that was something kind of fresh. Well, it's not as interesting as the main conflict in the movies, but hey, it's kind of cool. Now we just got, wow, it's Caz Bane. Don't you want to see Caz Bane in live action, except it's not really live action, it's just CGI, but we're Disney and we pretend like we're not using CGI, even though we clearly are, even though that's the whole reason people tend to dislike the prequels, and we're just giant hypocrites, and George Lucas is being held to an unfair double standard, even though, like, the Star Wars prequels look okay, and all things considered, their use of CGI was pretty damn innovative at the time, and there's nothing innovative about it anymore, but when Disney does it, it's okay, and when George Lucas does it, he's evil, even though he's the guy who fucking invented Star Wars. That's what really gets me about Star Wars, ultimately. It's just the weird double standard that the fans hold George Lucas to as some kind of awful villain or something. It's like, get a grip. You know, if he hadn't lived, if he hadn't existed, Star Wars wouldn't fucking exist. That's just how it is, you know? The guy's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, but nobody really recognizes him as such because he doesn't make, like, you know, more like upscale movies like Apocalypse Now or whatever. You know, he's not Ford Coppola, so everyone goes, oh, he's a commercial sellout. But his movies have just as much, like, narrative vision and complexity and cool shit as anyone else's movies. So, like, he should be canonized as one of the great directors of all time. But everyone's just like, oh, when he does it, it's bad. But when Disney does it, it's good. It's just ridiculous. Like, Star Wars is a franchise that just shoots its own self in the foot because nobody likes the prequels, even though the prequels are, like, fucking good. They're some of the only good movies of the 2000s. I like frickin' Mace Windu. I like Ki-Adi-Mundi. God, there's so many great characters out of the prequels. What the fuck do the sequels have? They don't have any characters I give a shit about or, like, remember the names of. There's no iconic shit to speak of in them. They're empty and vapid husks. It took a while for me to achieve this realization, but I fully accepted it, is that Disney has killed Star Wars and there's no point anymore in caring about it because nothing good is going to come of it. And I only watched the 3 sequel movies because, you know, I thought they were like big events and I was like, oh, I want to be there for the cinematic events of a lifetime, but everyone's already forgotten about them and nobody gives a shit at this point because, like, they're so forgettable. Every planet, every character, nothing matters in them. They're just filler. They're just empty fluff. Yeah, Star Wars is pretty much dead, and I would only recommend ever watching the originals and then the prequels, or the prequels and then the originals. Like I said, you can watch them in either order. But that's the only stuff I even bother considering canon, because it's the only stuff that has, like, a really, really tight, cohesive vision that makes sense, you know, because George Lucas knew what he was fucking doing, and J.J. Abrams does not know what he's doing, and this is why sci-fi these days is ass, because we don't have visionaries like George Lucas anymore, who are, like, able to make smart decisions. But it's honestly amazing that a space opera as grand as something like Revenge of the Sith was able to come out in 2005. You know, I wouldn't expect a movie that good to be made in 2005, but against all odds, George Lucas was able to pull it off and fulfill his vision and just kind of complete the story without a sequel trilogy, because really, there doesn't need to be one. There's no need to continue the story after Return of the Jedi. That is the end of the arc. I wouldn't even consider the Clone Wars show canon, even though I know that, like, George Lucas's ideas were heavily involved in it, because I just don't care about the animation. It doesn't appeal to me. I like the Cartoon Network show's art style a lot more than the computer animated look. It looks, like, really stiff and janky, and all the models look like ass. Like, you know, just watch the 6 movies and the Star Wars Holiday Special, because that's also canon, of course, and it has a way cooler cartoon in it than the fucking Clone Wars, and, like, all the celebrity cameos. It's fucking good, you know? It's just another example of Star Wars fans being like, I don't like George Lucas when he makes Star Wars Holiday Special's fine. It's pretty freaking good. And I'd much rather watch the Star Wars Holiday Special than watch fucking Book of Boba Fett. I mean, really, which one are you going to have more fun watching? Do you just hate fun? I feel like the tragedy of Star Wars ultimately is that people don't pay enough attention to what's succeeding in Star Wars, and they keep chasing after this phantom illusion of a Star Wars that doesn't even exist. And they're just like, yeah, we missed it this time, but the next spin-off show is going to be great. The next one, man, it's going to be fan-fucking-tastic, and it'll return the series to its glory. But this is the sad truth. It's never going to be 1977 again. A New Hope is not going to come out unless people bother to come up with new ideas and a story as good as A New Hope. and that probably won't happen for some time, and it definitely won't happen from a corrupt conglomerate like fucking Disney. So I'd be a little patient on that until we have a sci-fi universe that's as rich, as layered, as exciting as the one that George Lucas brought to us in 1977. Star Wars is a great series with phenomenal special effects, and it really is timeless because it's set in a galaxy long, long ago and far, far away, and it reflects a lot of interesting themes and allegorical, political type subterfuge, and it truly does deliver on the name in that there's both stars and wars in the series. However, it's been fucked. It's just been gobbledygooked up, and it doesn't make any sense anymore, and nobody can agree on what even happens in it, so I don't even care. And now I hear there's going to be a new series, a new trilogy with Daisy Ridley, because, you know, Disney wants to make as much money as possible, so they're going to toss out a bunch of craptastic streaming shows instead of just making more fucking movies, because, you know, movies you can only pay for once in the theater, but streaming shows, oh boy, monthly subscriptions. So, you know, they want to scam their audience out as much as possible. What I hear, this new Daisy Ridley thing is going to be a movie trilogy. Am I going to go watch it? No, because I don't care about Rey. I don't care about this character. She's poorly defined and poorly written. Same way I don't care about a Poe Dameron movie, or a Finn movie, or a fucking what's his name movie. I don't even know the names of any characters. What's her name? The purple hair lady. I don't care about any of these characters, and I don't want to watch them in further movies. I just want all of this stuff to be put in the trash compactor on the Death Star and just go psh. I just want to see it compacted, because I'm done with it. Star Wars is ass now, and it's lost all the charm it had a long time ago. Do I think that George Lucas could have made a really great sequel trilogy if he had kept the rights to Lucasfilm, hadn't signed it away to Disney? Yeah, probably. I mean, there was some damn interesting shit, like the Wills, and more about the midichlorians, maybe something about Darth Plagueis, and I bet that George Lucas would have done a damn better job at adapting Thrawn or the Yuzan or some of that, but we'll never get to see what that would have looked like. Damn, I sure wish we could have, but it's just not going to happen. We're not going to see any of those well-written characters who were written in long, narratively cohesive novels on the big screen, because it's Disney now, and that's canon, and the stuff that you like, oh, that's just legends. Well, I say fuck it. It's all fiction, so as far as I'm concerned, Jar Jar Binks is fucking God, okay? Yeah, how you like that, Disney? Suck on this. Anyway, I'd say that's ultimately the tragedy of Star Wars. Fans are fucking rabid. They forced George Lucas to sell the rights, and he got fucking sick of it, and so we didn't get any more good movies, and then, you know, it could have been great, but nobody appreciated what was great about it, and then it's just ass. It's just all garbage now. So that's the tragedy of Star Wars. You know, Star Wars might be dying, but man, oh man, Dune is taking its place. Dune Part 2 comes out in just a little bit, and bet your ass I'm gonna be in the theater to see that shit. Paul Atreides and his fucking sandworm adventures. Oh yeah, I'm gonna watch that instead of the Book of the Mandalorian Part 5. Anyway, yeah, thanks for watching the video. Thumbs up and like for more, and until next time, it's Jar Jar Binks, and it's time for a little boogie. Do 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 do.